I'm Clint, and welcome to Swatches Livestream number 42. And this time we're going to be taking a look at the finals for the Seed of Renewal challenge. Now, this has been an art challenge that's been open to the patrons of the channel here, and they have come up with a collection of different images based on the outline that I created, and we're going to be looking through those, see what works, what doesn't, make some suggestions about how they might be improved, and everybody can just be learning this together. All right, I'm going to switch over to my desktop so you guys can go ahead and see some of those images. And it looks like the stream is good, so I will minimize this. And if you're watching this and recording, know that I'll be taking a couple of minutes here for people to join in live, and then we'll get started. So you might want to scrub ahead a little bit on the play, I don't know what you call it, the little play bar there. And just give a chance for people to join in here live. Now, to give you an idea of what they are going over, let me go with this tab and go over. The outline that they are trying to fill is over here. So this was the challenge that they were given, to create an illustration for a fictional game that showed a large seed suspended over the ground, emanating a life-giving magic that is spawning vibrant vegetation and basically bringing to life the barren ground that is around it. It should have a mood of hopefulness, renewal, or kind of bringing beauty from the ashes. And they have had 3 weeks to work on this one because I was traveling last week, so it's gone a week longer than usual. And, oh yeah, if you've been watching the stream for a while, then you'll realize this location there in the background. So I'm back to having to use the computer at this location because the current house that I'm in right now does not have internet. My friends were gracious enough to allow me to come here to do any live streaming that I might need to do. So here we go. Looks like we got a couple of people coming in, and of course, if you're joining me live, then feel free to send me messages and questions in the live chat. Put @Swatches in the words so that it will flag it for me, and I'll be able to know that's directed at me. All the volume is maxed out, Tyler. I'm sorry, I literally cannot make it any louder. There's a difference between me recording sound for a video and me streaming sound for YouTube, because it goes through a totally different program. And for whatever reason, even if you max things out, I can do that. It reset that, so I'll set that back up, but I don't think I can do more than that. Let me double check if the last update reset my sound output. Let me turn that up. Sound output. Okay. There we go. That might have been it. It might have reset from last time I updated the OS. So hopefully that'll take care of it. Hello from Poland. Giles, Jacob, Christian, Ben, Brianna, thanks for joining in the stream. Okay. Yeah, I apologize about that. I forgot to check. Sometimes it does reset it, and I forget to check. So, well, I think we'll go ahead and kick it off with what the new challenge will be. Obviously, we're looking at the finals for this one. And we'll go ahead and kick it off with a new one, and then I'll recap it at the end of the live stream as well. So for this, we're continuing with Spirevale, which is the fictional fantasy game we're generating a lot of the images for. This one is the War Wagon. All right, so this would be an action card in our game, and you need to show a large armored mechanized wagon. Wagon is sort of broad. Barreling down a road. This is a goblin contraption and should be chock full of cannon barrels firing, flamethrowers spitting fire out, javelin launchers going off, all that kinds of stuff. you can be creative with that. One goblin drives at the front of the wagon by means of levers and pedals and switches. It is mechanized, so it should have like a steampunk kind of feel. It's all pipes and exhaust and smoke and riveted plates. Other goblin heads, hands may be seen poking out of the windows as they operate the wagon. So you might see somebody like working the cannon or shooting a bow and arrow out of it, that sort of thing. The goblin vehicles are kind of ramshackle, so make sure it's not too finely built. Give it some crooked angles and all the edges don't meet up quite right. It's all boards and metal plates kind of put on there. Odds and ends have been added onto it, that sort of thing. It is a noisy, ridiculous destruction. This is a fun scene. It's not dark or gritty, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be highly realistic. Kind of think of a Hearthstone style. But if you want to go a bit more the D&D side, where it's usually slightly more realistic or maybe a little bit darker, maybe as far as that. Also, a good option for traditional painting. This one, frankly, was inspired by a piece done by fellow magic artist Steve Prescott, who did Goblin Contraption. So you'll definitely want to go download a copy of this. So these sort of fellas, right? This is a Goblin Contraption. He's got all kinds of whirly things of death going on here. So try to get this, channel this as you're designing yours, kind of put it into a wagon setting, have it flying down the road. And remember, we're going for a lot of action. This is really good use of color on what he's got going on here. More illustrative than it is, say, just straight realism. And I think this is an excellent challenge because it is something that you'd likely come across in a lot of different kind of games. And it also gets us to cover some things that we really haven't covered that much in other challenges, particularly the element of speed. You want to show this thing moving. In this case, one of the best ways cartoonists go about showing like a car going fast is that it's literally not even touching the ground. They'll have an entire car off the ground, show like dirt flying up behind it, dust kicked up behind it. Also look at how he's doing things like fire coming out of the back of the rocket, how he's doing the smoke, the light coming out of the cannons, all of these sorts of things. So that is what we're doing. Ben says, why did you move to Hawaii? Why did you move back to the mainland U.S.? Well, I went out there. There was a church ministry that was looking for some extra help out there. So I had went out there to be a part of that for a while. But that wrapped up, so I have moved back here to Tennessee. And yeah, this is sort of like my second home. I grew up in Texas, but this area of Tennessee is sort of second home. So I'm here doing some work with my friends and working on my own stuff. Yeah, just visiting with them. That's what's going on. Christian says, hey, Clint, where can I read the challenge again? Is it on the Facebook group? It will be shared on the Facebook group. It will be shared on the Patreon group. And I'll throw this image out there as well. Feel free, of course, to go find more references that pertain maybe to different aspects that are not shown on this. I don't want you to copy this, but just, get inspired by it. And just a recap, if you're not familiar with how the challenges work, anyone is welcome to create images, but only patrons at the $10 level or above over on Patreon will get their stuff reviewed in the live streams. But the description itself will be available to anyone, and you're welcome to just post them out on the Facebook group for Swatches and share it with them, get feedback from them, and that's open for everyone. That, of course, is at swatches.group. We have 1,400 and plus members right now, which kind of blows my mind, but that's awesome. The Patreon link is patreon.com/swatches if you want to become a patron. Okay, we've got 24 right now. Also tonight, I'm working with the little, my little Wacom pad, because I shipped all of my stuff back here and everything has arrived except for one box. And that box has the pin to my full-sized drawing pad, stylus pad. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting on that particular box, I have to use my little one. It just is weird because I'm used to how the big one is, and I'm going too fast with this little one. Yep. Okay, some reason it's acting weird, like I'm holding down a key. I don't know why it's doing that. Huh. Well, we'll see if it keeps going. Anyway, all right, so let's take a look at, oh yes, this is the image, Jennifer? Yeah, Jennifer. This currently is the thumbnail for this video, so it has a little close-up of your image. If that is not good for you, for some reason you don't want it a part of the thumbnail, just leave a comment, let me know, and I'll sub it out for somebody else. But I thought it made a nice thumbnail, so there you go. And of course, credit is on the description in the video. All right, entries. Let's take a look at them. I already had a tab open for it anyway. We'll just go alphabetically here. Oh, there we go. I don't know what the deal is. It really thinks I'm holding down a button. I don't know why that is. Let me unplug it to replug it, see if it... Yep, just, I don't know, bad connection or something. I'm not used to this pen. I can't only make it go where I want. Okay, Brianna. Yeah, I remember your sketch, so you've definitely took it to heart. A lot of the stuff that I said. We got the flowers coming around with the design of the spiral. Spiral was a great design choice because you're trying. It's a very growth sort of design. It has a good flow, a nature flow to it. Of course, you see spirals in nature itself quite a bit, so that makes it a good choice. Now, here is a lot of the points on this one are about how it holds up small. Okay, the image, give me that. Oh yeah, I'm also used to my other keyboard. So, okay. When it's smaller, a lot of your detail is completely lost. And unfortunately, a lot of the narrative of what is needed to understand the piece is in the details. So when it gets smaller, we lose too much of what is important in the image. And that primarily goes with the flowers, the vegetation. Those become just visual noise. You can't really read those too well as vegetation. So we want to make sure to correct that, find a solution to that issue. We also see that in hey, I'm fine with there being designs on this thing. I think that's cool. But it's totally lost. Like, if this was printed on some actual card or in a board game, that would be barely visible. So a couple of solutions that we could look at without having to necessarily repaint the image would be to, I'm going to just try to do this simple. Overlay. We want to bring the green back a lot more. The green is just being completely overshadowed by how bright this white light is. And in fact, you could consider just tinting that light green instead of being so white, and that would bring a lot more color back into that. And that's one of the things that we're losing is it just doesn't have much vibrancy to it. Like, that has some color, But this is all pretty washed out. So we can come back. I'm just using an overlay layer. Obviously, I'm doing all of these very quickly. I'm just trying to give you the Cliff Notes version of how you, the direction to go with the image. As I usually say, I'm trying to give you like a proof of direction, not necessarily a finished piece. And then also the ground is completely gray. And yeah, gray is a fine choice, but we need maybe some brown in there as well. Something just to change it up a little bit, to bring a little color back into it, right? I mean, it can be dirt, but we can also have some variation in the dirt. Maybe sandy dirt, warmer dirt, cooler dirt, all that, just adding a bit of that into there. And then we can come back with, I'm going to use a randomized brush because I just need to do some different things here, different shapes. Let's pick something like pink, and then have some more pops of color, bigger pops of color from the flowers, right? Stronger, bigger pops of color. Boom. Now we see that if this gets little, we get a lot more of that green, a lot more of the feeling of the vegetation and life and kind of going on there. And I'm going to grab a darken, set that to 50. And yeah, I want to hit that white light down a bit. So if I can hit that white light down, I'm doing a darken layer at 50%. So it's only darkening things that are lighter than that green right there. So it's not affecting the shadows or the midtones, only the light stuff. And that light probably gets weaker, right, as it goes away further from the source. So we can use a darker green out there. And maybe we even use like a yellow at the start, right, and it gets less. So here we bring a lot more life into the scene. And I like the choice of the background. It's obviously very decayed, kind of destroyed buildings. I think it gives the right atmosphere. But it is a little too, it's like a little too clean. Like we might run some of this stuff off of the page, right? Oh, that was still set on darken. It doesn't need to be perfectly fit where the sky is one solid line across the image. So we can just have like broken building stuff, some boards sticking out, that sort of thing. So, like that. All right, that would be the direction I think you could go. The composition still works, the idea works, but we need to step up the color and make sure that all of these sorts of things read better from a small size. All right. Thank you for entering, and I look forward to what you're going to be doing with the next one. Don't save. Okay. Oh, yeah, I couldn't see the chat. Let me check. Mehmet, Jonathan, welcome. Thanks for joining the stream. 4 a.m. Woo, boy. I appreciate your diligence to the stream. Hopefully you're going to get enough sleep. This is recorded, right? I feel you could turn down the total volumes and saturations and dodge at the light source and make more highlight at the base of the egg. Yeah, there could be a bit more light coming off at the base of the egg, and I think that would be nice. Do we have next challenge? Yes. There is a new challenge. We just talked about it, but I will recap it at the end of the live stream as well. It is a goblin-driven war wagon with guns and cannons and flamethrowers and all this stuff. So yeah. Okay, next up, let's take a look at Christoph. Cool beans. All right, what we got? Oh, yes. I remember this. Yeah, and you have like the crystal, almost like a glass crystal egg. And I think that's a really cool idea. It makes me almost think that it's some sort of magical artifact. Okay, pull that up. Again, I want to make sure, does it work well when it's smaller? It works pretty well. It reads nice. I like the shapes, easy composition to follow. This gets really complicated down here. The other thing is, if you've read my chapter on colors, you can go check out the store link and find it. Part of the Understanding Mood book is colors. And all colors have different connotations. And although there is room to play with that, generally, if you're going to be conveying something like nature, growth, and renewal, you better have a really good reason you're not using green. Because green is the main color that conveys all of those points. And I would be looking for reasons of how, not reason, I'd be looking for opportunities to add green into this image. So, I'm going to try it with just a photo filter. If you don't use photo filters, I use photo filters a lot to check things. Not necessarily even to use them, but just to check, to give me a quick idea whether I like the direction or not. So, depending if you're very new to Photoshop, you can come down over here to the one that has a split half and half on the circle and go down to Photo Filter. And you can also find it up here. You can go up to Image Adjust, Photo Filter. There, yeah. Then it will prop up this little fella, and you can choose which filter you want to use. Now, I want to see what if there is more green. And because you already have so much yellow in it, I'm going to be looking for green that is slightly more to the blue side to offset the warmth. And I'm going to set that up a lot higher. Yeah, back it up just a little bit. Oh, whoa. Somewhere around there. Okay, and set that up. And then what you can do is paint around with it on the mask. So I'm going to just inverse that mask. Control-I switches it to black. And then anything that I paint on with white in that mask will show up as more green. And then you can change the... move that. You can click on that image right there again, and adjust this. So I have it turned way up. It's like 90% tinted. So that would be more green. Even if this thing faded to green, like towards the bottom, and then it gets more red there, I'm almost thinking, like this is a great place to add some other color too. So color. I want to say you're largely successful with this image, all right? I'm just talking about maybe where can we push it further? Like a little gradation in these might be cool. No, I think that was a little too strong, so I'm going to pull out just a bit of other color in that, right? To kind of shift it a different direction. Yeah. All right. Jonathan says, recorded is not the same as live. No, it's not. No. What else? So that would be one thing. I'd probably shift from the yellow to the green side of it, and then let part of this go to green. Or maybe there's a green inner light, or there's green more on the outside. And it would make sense that if the tip of this goes towards green, then it would have more of a green light down here. But either way, it doesn't have to be, like you could still have this nice and green, even though that this is very yellow. Something else is that we have very, very high contrast through here. And that means that we're losing a lot of color, right? And this is something I've mentioned quite a few times, but the closer you are to white, the less color you can actually have. And the closer you are to black, the less color you can have. So the most color is always going to find itself towards the mid-range. Now, in this case, let's just have a normal layer and then put a bit of green. So if we can just get this towards the green side a little bit more, we can get more color out of it. And that's what we want, right? We want more of that. And this is probably where you can tone that down. You can play down how red that background is. You just want the light. I get the light is very yellow, but we just want it to be a little bit duller. So that's the direction I would think to go with that. This is also something I'm not understanding really well, which is that white thing. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Unless you give some more context to that, I would say probably remove it. I don't know kind of where that's coming from or where that's going as far as what's going on. These, I know that you're doing like the really proper lighting and shading of this. This is lit on one side and shadow on the other side. But we're also looking at this scene. That this scene is not real dark, right? There's a lot of light in this scene. You can properly see stuff. So we don't need to be going to black on these shadows. Right? We can go to a darker version, but think how these would look if they were nice and mid-tones and full of color. And also a good place to have gradation between different colors of green. Maybe it starts out more yellow at the bottom and it can even get more like bluish as it goes up to the top. And that's where you can bring a lot of that color back in. Okay, excellent piece. Hopefully that was helpful. Yep, and we'll move on to the next one. Mitch says, oh, hey, Mitch, thanks for joining. Hey, Clint, are you excited for full Photoshop on iPad Pro? Adobe's presentation was pretty cool. That is news to me. I didn't know that that was a thing. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. I messed around with their abbreviated version, and it was okay. I found that I liked other programs better. So, well, that's not the right program. But if they're having full Photoshop, I might jump back over and use it more. It's going to be busy. I mean, it's a lot to pack on the screen. I know the iPad screen has a pretty good size, but it is a lot to pack on the screen. The other thing is, I know Photoshop like the back of my hand, as they would say, and that is a big plus. So, yeah, I guess I'm a little excited about it. Okay, let's turn that over here. All right, on this one, this is Giles. Giles, whose last name I won't even attempt. Okay. So on this, again, different keyboard. Okay. Let me move that up a little bit. There. Okay, so on this one, I love the abundance of color. I think that a lot of the other people were holding back on the color, and you really went for it, and that is one of the pluses of the scene. This is what I was talking about, right? He has a lot more midtones in this scene, therefore the midtones allow him a lot more color. But the image is basically midtones, and now we're losing a bit of control of the values. That's what I would focus on this one. So let's set that to color, and I'm going to fill it with white. So you can see by putting a white color layer over it that it shifts everything basically to the midtones. We can take a look at the values of, well, that helps if I go to the right layer. Let me switch that. So here we go, that most of the image is setting here. I mean, it's a pretty good breakdown, but we don't have any blacks. If we had blacks or more real darks, we would get somewhere around here. That gives us more contrast. And remember, the lights look lighter if you have something darker to show them against. So in this case, I think we need that, and it'll make the seed look like it's even brighter. So a little bit darker there. And let's make a new layer. Arlie says, hey Clint, woke up this morning and realized the Dropbox link had come and gone while I slept. That is really my bad. As you may know, I've been moving over the last week from thousands of miles away. This is the first afternoon I've even got my computer up and online, and I had totally forgot to make that link and put it up there. That's my bad. Arlie, go ahead and submit your piece into your final into the next one, into the sketch submission for the next one, and I'll go ahead and take a look at that because that really is my bad. So I'll leave a little extra time to catch up on somebody if they didn't have a chance because, you know, you're on the other side of the world and you were asleep. Yep. Okay. You said, I imagine there would be too small for a full Photoshop. Yeah, or they might go with some sort of different layout. They might find like a more streamlined way to put all the information there. That's kind of what I expect they'll do. Okay, so here, what do we want to do? Well, the focus is kind of all over the place right now because there is so much color. And what we are doing is we're losing the juxtaposition of the dead environment becoming life. This looks like an environment that is just completely full of life and there wasn't anything dead that it's growing out of. So I'm going to shift that to color. And we're kind of going to do the opposite of what we did on the other one. Here, we may want to go more dead with some of this background. Some of this feather stuff. And maybe even like this. Maybe we'll leave that stuff, but this. So some of these things further away from this seed, and some of that purple in the background. Like maybe the purple is more right around that area. So what we want is basically a gradient of color vibrancy so that it, let me make a new layer, so that it's really vibrant in this area, half as much, you know, kind of in that area, and then it goes much desaturated, kind of duller and dead on the outside. And that would work quite well. This actually looks pretty good. I mean, I was kind of thinking of floating, but you've got this thing that kind of hangs down off of it. And I would go along with that. And I think probably most art directors would be okay with that. So that coming down here is cool. This looks like maybe you're going with water and like lily pads. Or I can't tell if those are like lily pads or mushrooms. So we need some more work on that. I think you got the general idea, the layout, the colors that you like, and I think those all are fine. If this is water, that needs some work. I can't quite tell. And if it is water, we're going to be getting a reflection, I think, of this guy down here. Might want to use more of the vertical kind of reflections on it as they come down this way. And what else? You might keep those guys up there. Those are a nice bit of color there. So maybe on this one, it's almost like the life is starting up top as well. And it's sort of following that pattern, which would be pretty cool. That would work well concept-wise. As, you know, so, you know, kind of dead here and dead there. Yeah. Next is go find some more plants, plant references, and come in here, look at how the leaves work, look at how light comes through the leaves, and pay attention to that. This is one of those, unless I'm like really taking time, I can't break down necessarily how to go about painting all of these individual elements. The tree, bush, thing shapes are pretty good to start with. You might want to keep working with them. And you can come up with some really nice twisty stuff. I love the twisty nature of it. So think about how it's doing that. See what kind of cool twist. Look at references for like bonsai trees. They get some really cool shapes in those. So that would be my feedback on yours, Giles. Hopefully you find it helpful. Toss that one down. Totally missed upload time. Posted on Facebook. They compress all the tools pretty well to make it still functional. Okay, yeah, that's what I reckon. The lily pad perspectives, yes. Yes, it's water. Okay. Yeah, it's one of those that I think it's good as a direction, but it needs work to really be finished out. A properly finished piece shouldn't have anything where you look at it and go, I don't know what that is. And so make sure you convey what everything is. It doesn't mean everything has to be detailed. That's not the same thing. Even a silhouette can be understood if it's a good, clean silhouette. If it's well positioned, if it's well executed, you can go, oh, that's a silhouette of this, and that answers the question of what it is. And that's what we need to do. Is like, what is that plant? It's a green thing, so is it a lily pad or is it a mushroom? We've got to answer those sorts of questions. Yeah. Ben says, how many new Patreons did you get after making the Art Challenge critiques a Patreon-only privilege? I think I picked up like 10? 10? Yeah, it's somewhere in there. It was like 10, give or take a couple. Yeah. Okay, going to Gilherm. All right, Gilherm. Yes. Make a new layer. Okay, this one, you definitely go in a different direction with this one. I like the spirally magic idea. It's something kind of going off of what I said. The life in the desert works. That's a good concept to be going on with. What we're losing, this one is another one where a lot of midtones. So, yeah, my bad. Here we go. So a lot of here. We don't have much on the lights, and we don't have anything in the darks. So even just punching those up will give us a bit more visual pop. Because remember, if something gets printed, and I'm saying this as if it was a fictional game and it would, get printed, you got to remember that most things will lose a little contrast and a little vibrancy when they get printed. Even Magic cards do, and they use excellent printing. So you might lose 5% when you do that. Even a lesser quality printing, you can easily lose 10%, which is a big deal when you're starting with this. And then we're talking about, let's go to hue. Then we're talking about, why is that not coming up? Then we're talking about losing, a little bit more off of that. And it grays out very easy. So we want to make sure that that's punched up a little bit. And now we got to look at things that maybe are not being conveyed well enough. One is this, I can't tell that that's flying. It looks like, or floating, it looks like it's just setting on that location of the grass. So there needs to be maybe a shadow down here indicating that it's floating, or it would be a complete overhaul of the image, but it would need to have a different viewpoint like some of the others, right? It's very easy to tell that this is floating because we're seeing it from the side. But because we're seeing this one from the top, we have to find a different solution to convey that issue. Or maybe there is a light coming down from it and the light emanates out And that would kind of help indicate that it's floating. So there we go. Edward, you're catching the first live stream. Well, man, thanks for joining the live stream. Glad you were able to make it. So that has to be something that is dealt with. The other thing is the seat itself is not visually very impactful. So either it needs maybe be bigger, and that's really a good option because right now it fits within the shape of this grass, right? But it would stand out more visually if it broke the line of that grass. Hopefully you follow what I'm saying there. So it breaks the shape. Something else is this looks almost like a piece of sod. You can buy just grass in a sheet in order to put grass on your lawn. And because it has very clean edges. So my suggestion would be to come in here and make it look like this is growing. Remember, this is something that's active. This is an action card. So we need to convey that this is something that is happening, not something that simply is. So little pieces of grass are starting to break up out of the cracks out here. And they could really be what's also helping split some of these cracks open, right? So some of them get even bigger and bigger as more and more grass is coming out of these cracks. So yeah, let's do that. Let's maybe, I'll use something else and just, okay. So the grass is sort of starting to go out there, but then it's really dense up by where this thing is. So they're all, and it gets less and less, it goes out. And we might even see a little patches of the sandy stuff back up underneath those. Yeah. Let's bring in some more color. You started well with these pops of flowers. So let's grab somebody, I don't really care, somebody like this. And more flowers. You can even get a flower brush, put some variances on the shape, the angle, and the color, and you can quickly block in a bunch of different kind of randomized flowers. Then you come back and you paint them individually, and you make them distinct with nice edges and stuff. Maybe you've got a certain color scheme going on here, so I wouldn't break that up too much. You might go as far as kind of the warm side of the pinks. Have some of those flowers in there too. Maybe some little guys. Different shapes are good. You can have something that maybe is a more vertical flower. I can't remember what they're called. My grandmother has some at her house. They're a long stem with flowers that come down them. And this could also be good to give more depth into the image, because right now it's very just plainer. It's all kind of just flat across the ground. But if we were to put those guys in there, then now we could have, these stalks coming up. You would draw the stalks first and then put the flowers on it. I'm doing it backwards. But this would help to give like a three-dimensionality feel to it as the perspective goes down, right? Bluebells. Yeah, bluebells would be similar. Yeah, that'd be kind of flower. I don't think it's what she has, but that would be the right kind of flower. That way. And just for, kind of dramatic, cinematic lighting, maybe just darken that back there a bit. Just to bring focus back into this area. And then we can run a linear dodge and pop up the lighting. That's not the right key. And maybe just pop the lighting there with that. So that, I think, would be an excellent direction to go. Show the action of these guys being the tallest, the most vibrant, the most colorful here. Let the grass go out. Remember, grass grows differently. It's not just less grass, but we're talking about smaller blades of grass, and kind of look at how grass grows, and get some of the little guys coming out of the cracks. And then for these vertical flowers, then have those, you know, a lot up in here, and then smaller ones that just have like a couple of little flowers, smaller ones as it goes out. And that would really help to convey what's going on there. This magic, see if you can get some more color out of that. It's fine if the if the center of it is colorful, but we want to make sure we have some color from it as well. And that can be circling out, and it gets a little bit fainter as it wafts out away from that. So there we go, Gilherm. A couple of things that you need to, figure out about how can we make the shape of, the visual, the seed look more interesting. How can we make sure that it looks like it's floating? And let's really pump up the colors and the impact of the magic going on. Okay, close this one down. Use the flowers to show the shadows. Yeah, that would be a possible solution. You barely try and blobs look like flowers already. Well, Tyler, that also goes over to using your viewers' own perception to help you. They want to think that they're flowers to begin with, because they expect to see those colors in that location being flowers. So by putting in some semi-flower shaped and colored things in there, you can use a lot less effort to actually paint the flower than what you would think you would need. Yeah. This one? Okay. Sergio. Okay, thanks for joining. Irene. Maybe would a different, more dynamic perspective work better with this idea? Yeah, and that was one of the options. A different viewpoint might be better, but this one still conveys it. And if you can just resolve those points, I think it would do fine. Okay, next up, James. Okay. Oh, yes, I remember this. Move up. Okay. Yeah, I remember this scene. This is better. Yeah, a lot of improvements here. So, what I'm liking about it is obviously the seed is very visible. It's very easy to recognize as the source of what's going on here. Good shapes out of your plants. Sorry, my nose is getting real itchy. Good shapes out of the plants, particularly using the S curves and the C curves, because those have a lot of feeling of life in them. And I also think that, if I recall, you had a big one over here that kind of competed for the... I think it was you that had a big one over here, and it competed with the seed, but you reduced it. And yeah, it makes the seed show better. That's a good curve, keeps you in the image. So where would we go from here? Okay, I think we're using a lot of the same green, and we might want to use some of the other color. Now this is somewhere we can use a bit of color there in the background and kind of contrast against it. Let's go with color. I can't remember what color you had on the background in the image, but it wouldn't hurt to bring in... You already have kind of this soft violet tone, and that's a good opposite to the green. So I want to use some of that back there. Maybe a little bit of that blue. It will look much more dead compared to all the green that you've got. So I'm not too worried about that. Now this is a good place where you might show not just a magic kind of field going around the seed, but showing some of that magic actually, not on a color layer, I'm not. But you show some of that going down there, and where it's connecting is where some of these flowers are popping up. Right? So, that sort of thing. And you might have more of it up here, and so it's like it's focusing down. Otherwise, it might feel like it's drawing from the ground. This is real contrasty, which I'm thinking there's probably a better shape to this, a better design. The overall shape is okay because it's very seed-like, but I can't really tell like what you're trying to go with as far as, is it wood, glass, that sort of thing. I don't know what it's made of. And it'd be nice to see some sort of design on it, some sort of texture. I mean, does it have ridges? Does it have some sort of scale? Does it have I don't know, like bumps or striations that go across it? Something, even some sort of wood grain. I mean, give it some sort of wood grain. Maybe it's a magical artifact. I mean, you can do like some of the other people, and there's designs carved into it. This is also somewhere that you can get really sidetracked with how to light this thing. And what I'd say is, let's just make sure it's not getting too dark. This can just be mainly in the midtones. And you give the idea that it gives off light mainly by the edges like this. It's not necessarily a super realistic way to do it, but it is a very good way to do it that holds up well visually. And it's often what people will do when they need a glowing object, but the object itself can't get too light because of whatever reason going on in the image. So you can keep it that tone and just keep the light around it kind of like you have it there. Didn't have time to finish it as much as I wanted to, but I tried to put all the most important information in. There was an idea for the seed to be more glass with more of a rainbow floating inside. Hey, go with that idea. That's fine. You could, treat it more like almost like a crystal. Yeah, you can find crystals or diamonds or glass that is shaped kind of like a seed, and see how those work. So in that way, you're probably going to be going with maybe facets. Like this is almost like a gemstone sort of thing. So you've got all these facets coming down of it, and the facets have different. Each one has kind of a different way that it reflects light. And look up tutorials on how to do gems. And there's a lot of good ones out there on that. What else? Back up from it. Something that's throwing me a little bit is the light around the plants. And I feel like this thing is giving off light, but also the light is on the ground around the plants. Okay, the main thing is it's breaking up the values over here a lot. And when you get it little, it's just maybe not reading quite as well as I would want. And I think that's just because we're getting a little too dark there. I'm talking a lot about values. So maybe instead of shifting darker, we'll shift to maybe a different color. So we get more into this kind of darker blue instead of shifting to black. So we still feel like it's getting darker, but we're not necessarily getting darker in value as much as we're kind of shifting colors. And that's also a good thing to remember in a lot of pieces, is that you have a limited value range, and if you can extend that by actually making some of the value change to be color change instead, then you can get more values out of your image. And this is good. Yeah, we can have like little mossy stuff on these guys. You've got a really wishy-washy sort of magic going on here in the background. I'd say just do away with it. Either make it distinctly there is magic light going on here, or there's not. Like here, we can definitely have some green, yellow, magic light going on. But if there's not, then just simplify it. Just let that tree be a nice, simple silhouetted kind of shape back there. And otherwise, it just looks kind of messy. That's what I was trying to think, what's the right way to say it? It just looks like it's sort of messy because there's little shapes and stuff going on. It's fine if you want to do maybe, do this sort of thing. Like, let me grab a lighter tone there. There's some light back here. This is one I can have some fun with, just playing with these values. Like you have fog sort of back here. You just want to obscure some of that. I like that color. I think that color fits well back there. So you can have like some foggy shapes, sort of break that up, give you some softer edges, and that would still give you some visual information without it necessarily looking as messy. And those can get like, cooler maybe as it goes up, that sort of thing. So this is what I'm talking about. Like you can have, bits of fog sort of flying around. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and stop it there. Yeah. Could you save this paint over? Well, you can see it in the video, but yeah, I can save it though. I'll just leave it there and save it when I close the stream. Okay, and it's done. This will work good. Big improvement. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, the piece is not, it's one of those things that the piece is not bad to begin with, but usually images don't take nearly as much to improve them as you think. If you just, you learn what to focus on, then improvement takes far less effort than you think it would. Of course, actually implementing all of this stuff would take time to do it properly, to do it cleanly, but the amount of change isn't as big. You can feel your eyes having a better read. Yeah, that's a lot of it, is how does a scene read? We want it to read easier. We want it to read from a distance, right? There, see, that's where we started, and it's very busy. So we don't necessarily want to get rid of a lot of the main information, but we're wanting to section the image with value and with color and with edges. So all this stuff down here could be a lot sharper, a lot more vibrant, a lot higher values. And back here, it's duller, it's cooler, and it has more soft edges to it. Yeah. The crystal would, the The seed would also show up well if it was a crystal because it would be a very unique, sharp shapes in this image and angular shapes, and everything else is all curvy. Okay, Jennifer. Okay, let's pop yours open. Yeah. This one is good, Jen. You did good. Very, very much taking in mind a lot of the things that I said in the last one. Pop it up a little bigger for everybody. And got the floating seed. Definitely look like it's giving life. The idea that the roots coming out are giving life to the scene is an excellent call. I appreciate that. The color scheme is also good. It reads very well of that simple green violet balance. And we're looking at one of the other images that were possibly going with the green violet. And you've really nailed it there. You've got some variation in the green, so it's not one solid green. You've got yellow green, blue green, warm green, brown green, and those all merge in together to give a more realistic and more interesting set of greens. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right. Mahmet, M-E-H-M-E-T, Mahmet. It says, Clint, how many times your patrons pay per month? It says, creation, does each one of your videos count? On Patreon, it is set per creation because sometimes a chapter right now, like on the mood book, will take me several months to do, depending on my work schedule. Sometimes I do it in a month, again, depending on what other projects I've got going on. And I have so far never done more than one per month. I don't anticipate doing more than one per month. Hopefully I can stick on one either per month or every other month is what I'm trying to aim for. So yeah, does every video count? Now the videos here on YouTube are completely separate from those on, are completely separate from the schedule on Patreon. The ones here on YouTube are weekly, unless I'm for some reason out of town, which I'll notify everybody. But otherwise, it's Friday evenings every week. Yep. Okay, so on this one, where can we punch this up a little bit? Well, the shapes are good. I like the shapes. This is good. I think we're losing some of the impact of all that lovely green and from some of these roots. So let's see about how do we want to go about that. As is most things in Photoshop, there are numerous ways to try to go about accomplishing the same thing. So I'm going to see about punching this up. And then I want to add, let's do a vibrance. Punch the vibrance up a lot higher. Punch the saturation up higher. And then that's sort of overkilling some of this image. But you can see that difference, right? Okay. So what we can do is create a mask on this one, and then let's see, it goes to black. So other direction. There we go. So I can keep the top half of the original image where it has the more well-balanced sky, but then the newer bottom of it has a lot more brilliance to it. Now, I'll make a new one, and then I will delete that. So this is the original, and then we kind of go like to that. We get a lot more pop and green out of all these fellas, which is nice. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Thanks a lot, Clint. I might join soon on Patreon. Okay. Also, first time I asked you for challenge, you pronounced right. Cool. Lucky me. I feel like that was a shot in the dark. Yeah. So yeah, okay, that would be my first thing is let's get all that lovely color and work that you did and make sure that's not lost. And then the purple flowers, excellent idea. And like we've done on some of these others, let's get those and punch them up a bit more by getting on the right layer. Like this. This is good. So you hear what she's done? This is, Jennifer, this backside here is a bit more diffused, and that really intensifies the depth of the image. Good call. So like here I'd go a bit softer on those. That purple back there would be just a little more faded out compared to the ones here on the foreground. Some of these guys would really have a big punch on them. And how about we shift over to a little bit more of the blue like you have on some of yours. Bit bigger maybe. Yeah. So you can see how that purple really does well. Right call. Let's just carry it a little further. And we also might play with a overlay layer a little bit. And I'm going to get that beautiful green tone that you have. Let that spill out around some of these vines a little bit more. Let me see that coming through around these guys. Coming across here. Coming around that guy. Maybe you see that underneath that one? I'm not sure. And then we can also light up them a little bit more. You're doing good in that they keep their overall shape pretty well, but possibly going to a warmer kind of tan color would even be good. Just to separate their color from the rest a little bit. Maybe if I grab like some orange, let them have a bit of their own tone there. Use a little orange light on that one. We could even use some like cool light up on top. We'd probably go all the way over to the blues, maybe. And we can have that green in the middle, kind of where they meet. Huh. Flowers always make things look better. Prettier. Yeah, they do. Okay, another good decision you made, Jennifer, that I would personally like to see pushed a bit further. I'm getting warm now. I've got a space heater pointed right at me under the table, so now I'm finally getting warm. Okay, so here are your little magic motes. Those are awesome. Let's punch those up further. I'm going to use a linear dodge, see if that'll work right. And you're kind of going with a cyan color with these. I'll push that over here. yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of running those a bit more. Nice little spots of color, visual interest, and it gives off that distinct magic, fairy glow sort of feeling that this image really could use. So all of those, of course, you would want to blur those a bit. Come back with my little smudge tool and fuzz those. Maybe you have some more green ones, like little ones, almost like they're coming out of the seed here. Or maybe they're falling off of like this, almost like it's fairy dust, right? Falling down. There we go. So that would be the before and after, right? Just kicking up that vibrancy. You have made so many good decisions on this piece. So let's just step it further, keep running with it. The background is all working pretty well. If I made any changes to the background, what would I be looking to do? I feel like it's perhaps left side heavy because you have most of the image going up like that. So to offset it, a small change would be to just let that guy, see, there's more mountain on that side, so maybe this guy is taller, but he's slimmer. So compositionally, he might be a bit more like that. And that would help balance the background a bit. And this is also where we could have the some softer edges where he just sort of goes off into the distance. I also might grab some color back there. Yeah. You have a little bit of atmospherics between those, so let's push that last mountain range back even further. You've already sort of established that, so now we're going to just go with it more. Did that. Yeah. And we can establish a little of the kind of shapes of the rocks and stuff. There we go. Ricardo says, hey Swatches, I found out that if I let a paint sit for a couple of days, then when I come back with fresh eyes, I can improve it so much more than if I pause for just a few hours. Yeah, that's often the case. You have to let your brain have a chance to work on the information. Frankly, that's why you sleep. Your brain needs time to organize a lot of the input that you have during the day. And whether you wake up with a fresh idea, usually you'll find that after you sleep, you'll at least have a better perspective of the image or have some options to consider. Yep. Sometimes you don't have days, but if you do, then that can often be the right choice. Okay. Thanks, Swatches. You made it so much more colorful and lively. We'll definitely try to implement some of those changes. Well, you're welcome, and thank you for entering it. I think this very well fulfills the idea of the image and the challenge. No. Jonathan is up next. Okay. Now, Jonathan, I saw your Facebook post out on the Swatches group and saying that it was going to take longer to finish it than you originally anticipated. And that's a mistake that we all make. we all overestimate how long things are going to take. That's simply something that you're going to get better at the more you paint. And frankly, I don't know that we ever stop underestimating how long things are going to take. I still think that I can paint faster than I can, and yeah. The other thing that you had said was just you kind of felt shameful about it, and that you were taking it really hard, and it made me want to bring up a point that perhaps isn't said enough, and that is you can't be too personal with your images. And I know that sort of flies in the face of the idea of the artist as this, really heartfelt guy that's struggling and he pouring his soul into his pieces and stuff. But dude, you can't make it long term like that. If you take images, successes, and failures personally, you're going to burn out. You just are. And I'm going to encourage you that you can't personalize success. Try to personalize successes because they're positive, but you can't personalize the defeats. You can't personalize shortcomings. And you have to realize that everything, in my mind, it helps me to think about it like this. Everything is a work in progress. All right? So this piece, even when it's finished, is still a work in progress. I am a work in progress. My art is a work in progress. So I'm not going to hold any of them to perfection because none of them are done. I'm not done. I'm not a finished artist. And having to learn where intellectually learn what you can from it. And, okay, I did this right. I did this wrong. And then maybe, if you need to feel bad for like 5 minutes. And then you move on and realize that you've got to be in the right attitude to start your next piece. You can't be letting the last piece have hold of you and bring you down, and you can't be ruminating on that, and you can't let that, be eaten at you, because you're never going to be able to bring your best for the next one. So that's sort of off topic, but it's something that if you don't deal with it, eventually it's going to eat you, and it's going to bring all of your art down. Because this is the way it works, all right? People fear failure, and it's kind of funny. It's called the loss gain. It's like the loss gain issue or the loss gain paradigm or something. It works like this. Here in the U.S., we use dollars as currency, so it feels worse to lose $100 than it is to feel good to gain $100. It's a worse feeling to lose 100 than it feels good to gain 100. So we feel bad feelings and bad memories worse than we feel good feelings and good memories good. And we have to remember not to give them more power, because I had to explain that to get to another point. I'm trying to remember what it was. Or maybe it'll come back to me. But hopefully that kind of gives you an idea. There was some other point about it. Maybe it'll come back to me. It was something that happened with me on that. recall what it was. I got a comment the other day. Somebody said, oh, yeah, you should show more bloopers on your videos. And I'm thinking, do you not watch the live streams? Sometimes I feel like that's one long blooper. Yeah. If you've never had a live stream in front of an audience, yeah, it's a unique thing. So, yeah. What was it about? Oh, I talked about it in one of the Vibrant streams, and that is people don't want to feel bad. People don't want to feel like a failure. And that feeling, the fear of that feeling, will cause you to make different choices. It will also cause your brain to create thoughts differently. So if your brain has all of these options, right? It's generating thoughts for you. And that kind of goes into how do you program your brain, what thoughts to give you? Anyway, your brain is creating thoughts. And you can kind of pick and choose which thoughts you like. That's a good idea, that's a bad idea, that's just stupid. Why didn't I even think of that? Well, if it's like, oh, he doesn't want to feel bad, he doesn't want to feel like a failure, then it's going to limit your options to safe options. And then if you fail within that, it's going, oh, well, that wasn't safe enough. Let me get even smaller. I need even safer options. And it will just limit your creativity because your brain doesn't want you to feel bad. And therefore, it will start shrinking your creativity, shrinking your spirit, so that your pieces will just get duller and drier. And that all comes from feeling through all the failures. Don't feel through the failures. Intellectualize them. A was wrong, B was wrong, C was good. Do C again. Move on. So if you haven't watched that video, I can't remember offhand. I might have to go look it up. Otherwise, just go watch all the Vibrance episodes that I've done. One of them has it. Where I jump into that more. But yeah, hopefully that helps you guys out a little bit on that topic. All right, we haven't even talked about the image here, but frankly, that little chat probably will make more difference long term than anything I say about this particular image. Yeah. Well, you say it always happens to me too. Yeah, it happens to all of us. It's something that we just deal with by maturing as artists and maturing as people. I mean, the same thing goes for everything in life. We get hurt, we feel bad, we fail. And you have to learn how to deal with emotion. And emotions can be your absolute strongest ally, and they can be your deadliest enemy. And you can't just give them free rein. So learn what your balance is going to be with your emotions. Acknowledge them and incorporate them as long as they're useful for your work. But if they're not getting you to your goal, then just deal them out. They don't need to be in this round, right? You need to focus maybe on other things. So there you go. This piece, dude, honestly, I knew this piece was going to be successful from the sketch because of the way that you just laid out this scene. So, Jonathan, yeah, it's probably not as finished, or maybe detailed or refined as you want. But I'll tell you right now that this is a really successful concept. Depending on the avenue, it might even be accepted as a finished image, depending on what you were creating it for. But what's going good here? Let's talk about some of the strengths. Is the dynamic use of the composition of the layout using, it's not a radial, but it's like, I consider like a blast radial design. This is very energetic, right? And it also does what? It shows you where the origin point is. It's clearly everything is starting here and going out. And no question about it. So it has a lot of energy. This is one of the most dynamic compositions that can convey energy. So perfect choice there for what you're trying to do with yours. You got good shapes in your trees. And what you don't want to do, that some people might want to do, is just like straight trees, right? No, we don't want them straight. This feels like they're actually growing. They're twisting as they're going up. And you're changing the size so that, of course, the biggest ones are in the middle. And then they get a bit smaller as they're going out, right? So excellent choices. The ground, definitely fullest here. We got a little bit out on this stuff. I think the background is good because when you have a foreground that is this busy, and this is probably the busiest foreground of all of them, in that you cover almost all of the image with the foreground elements, that you need a super simple background. And you've done that. You just use a simple dark to light gradient with strongly horizontal shapes to contrast against the radiating lines. So many good calls here. Let's delete that. What could we do to step it up a bit more? Similar to what we did with the other image, which is, let's just pop up some of the colors a bit more. Let me grab an overlay, a little green. It's like this grass is getting to be the same value as the ground, and it would probably work a bit better if we could get the grass itself to be a different value than the natural dirt. Maybe we're going to treat it like this dirt is dark. Maybe it's a dark clay, kind of a dark gray clay. And then if that green of the grass can just show up, not even because it's lit, but because the natural color of the grass is brighter and lighter, then that'll help it to stand out a bit more. I think this is a bit random, how you have the grass going right now. So cueing off of some of the things that we've said on the other images, it would also be a place where you could use radiating lines of grass. You don't want to go too perfect, it'll look sort of weird, but you can have them on a different layer. So you have them kind of coming out in tendrils, right? And you can have parts that break that up. And then some parts where the grass isn't just, right here it looks like somebody just sawed it off because it has a completely hard edge. I want to just break that edge up a little bit. It's like it's a graduation of grass to no grass. So a little gradation from no grass to grass. Yeah, there we go. Another place, you're very green heavy, so that actually works pretty well in this image because you do have some variances of green. Just for the sake of the image, I'm going to say let's pop in some color. You do have like reds and violets down here a little bit, but those don't necessarily go with your image. You have more of a navy green dynamic, navy yellow green sort of going on. So we want to find some colors that actually fit into that. And you got yellow up here, so I'm thinking yellow flowers could be a good choice. Or you could even go to some of this orangey color, something in that range, because it's already in the scene. Maybe as far as orange. But yeah, violet doesn't necessarily fit into your range that much. That's probably actually a bit too much. Just a little bit extra for the second read. You don't need those to show up too well to understand what's going on in this image. What else? I'm curious about adding... a bit more of a glow around that thing. Yellow looks just kind of weird. What if you went warmer with it? Is it like the seed glow there just goes from really, really light to dark background very quickly. I'm curious about adding just a bit more glow off of it like that and sort of letting it fade out that light some. Give it more of a magical aura. Yeah. And if we can simplify this, some of the trees are getting lost here in behind with the background because they're very similar values. And you've got this wonderful orange back here. So I'm going to say maybe there's more orange haze, orange light sort of filtering out that allows the trees. Oh, that's hard light. Hang on. The trees can actually be dark here. We're going to have some artistic license there. So more of that. It doesn't need to be as orangey as I had it. It's like flower orange. It's like back in here. Maybe there's a sandstorm or something that's sort of occluding that background, softening things out a bit. So not big direction changes. Maybe a bit that direction. If you don't want to go with the big glow, which that's a fairly major direction change, let's try it with doing it to some of these other parts, like giving some variance, not just to the very edge, but kind of overall on the these other greens on the leaves. Let the whole thing sort of shift over to the light. No, it's good stuff, man. Wouldn't take that much time. Hopefully, this gives you enough of an idea just how to finish it up. So, no major problems to do. This is all about just tweaking to get more out of the image. And yeah, there's some judgment calls like that isn't the solution. That is a solution. That isn't the solution. It is a solution, as is every piece. I don't know any piece has ever had one solution. Okay. That is not the right program. Let me take a look. Moment. But yes, both works for each one of us. Man, I love when you talk and guide people like that. Oh, okay, yeah, you're welcome. Oh, yeah, the points I was talking about. Yeah, I try to bring up stuff that applies, not just for that particular artist, but, things about dealing with images personally. That's everybody. And it's something that people don't discuss. And if you don't get your head around it, if you don't have a way that you're going to handle that stuff, unfortunately, I bet there's a lot of artists that quit due to that sort of reason. There's a limited number of years that you can beat yourself up over not being as successful as you want, or failing to, capture the image that you want, and that's going to wear you down. There's just no way it isn't. Yeah. Do you have any tips on not feeling creative enough to create an illustration, and when you do come up with something that is boring? Okay, I think that's not written real well, but do you have any tips? Okay, you're not feeling creative to come up with something, and when you do, it's sort of boring. Well, I'm trying to remember if I had a video on that topic. I think I've been thinking about doing a video on that topic, but I've talked about it a little bit. So let's go over a couple of ideas of you're not feeling real creative, and when you do, you come up with something that's boring. Well, first thing is, usually it sounds like you're running on low energy, so get some sleep. Also, if you're not feeling very creative, what is your inspiration? Where do you draw inspiration from? What inspires you the most? For me, it's looking at other artwork, because I need a new set of ideas. I need a new way to think about rendering a scene or composing a scene, or a different way that a character could be created. Just show me a different way, because I don't want to just be doing the same thing all the time. So get out there and look at other people's stuff, or go look at images from stuff in history, and think about, how can I combine two different things throughout history? How can I combine, an Egyptian with a cowboy? Okay, I guarantee you're going to come up with something interesting, right? The other thing is, those are times that you really need to have an understanding of the fundamentals, because fundamentals, they don't care how you feel. They will always work. So it doesn't matter whether you feel inspired, they'll still work. Dynamic compositions, like we talked about his radiating composition that he used in his image. It doesn't matter if he feels creative or not. You use a radiating composition, it's going to have energy to it. If the piece is dull or boring, then there's another way that you could go about dealing with it, and that is learning how to interpret your emotions or feelings of an image. So you look at a piece and you say, it's boring. No, it's not boring. Boring isn't a way to break down a scene. Boring is your emotional response to the scene. So visually, what does that mean? And that's one of those things I'm going over in the mood book every time. Is a mood is only a culmination of visual parameters. So learn what the visual parameters are that creates what you're going for, and there you go. You don't have to feel your way through it. You can just understand your way through it. And so it's boring. All right, sounds like you need maybe more contrast, a more dynamic composition. Maybe you need more vibrancy in your colors. Maybe you need a broader color palette. These are all things that move it away from the feeling of boring. Those are just some ideas. That might even be a good topic for, a full video, honestly. Okay, now this is Marcel. Marcel, yeah, you got the winter scene. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were the only one doing a winter scene, which I like the creativity of going something a bit different on that. Okay, so what's working here, what's not? Got the big seed thing. And I'm pretty open with the seed as far as, what it looks like. So it's this golden seed-like shape. It's got magic coming out of it. That works. I gotta say, I particularly like some of your stuff right down here. The way that you've rendered some of this out. This is good. This is good stuff. I feel like it's too limited right now. What we need is a lot more of that essentially going on. Let's see if I can play around very quickly with... That is already pretty large, but we need more green. We need more of the action, a little less maybe of the seed itself. So let's get rid of that. And then grab this guy. Get this guy a little bigger. Where is my bristly brush? There we go. Okay, so let's just get that guy out of the way real quick so we can see what's going on. All right. A little light coming out from that or something. Now we need to get a bit more green on this. Which layer was that? Nothing? Okay, let's use that one. And we can see some of the stuff around here. So it's spreading, right? All of this is starting to have green on all the near sides, like that. So the middle of this is just turning into an oasis. We've just got moss. And if you don't want to go with a lot of different kinds of plants, that's fine. That's fine. This is just a pretty inhospitable place to begin with. So if we can just do that. Maybe there's not quite so much snow, so that green shows up around those. But, yeah. That. And then more patches are growing, right? There's just more kind of creeping up. And you can start feeling your way about which parts have green, what doesn't. And these... I think magic is a good idea, but right now this magic isn't doing anything. These more like fiery little magic wisp, but they don't seem to be affecting anything. So I'd either take them out if they're not going to be doing anything other than just flying around, or they need to be spawning, like instead of the red light underneath it, grass and stuff needs to be spawning underneath everywhere that these things are flying is another idea. So all the stuff, all the area underneath those fellas are getting life and grass and goodness. That would be good. This place probably could even use just a little more dole down, so that the sky isn't quite so bright, and it makes it seem a bit more inhospitable. And that way, the life seems even more life-giving. That was maybe a little bit too much. Let's back off of that. Yeah, just a tad there. That would be good. I know if you want to keep with that sort of grassy moss thing going on, that can work. But frankly, I think it would be nice if you had even just some taller kinds of grass. Let's pull up. And it doesn't have to be something that reads instantly from a wide view, but a couple little grass. Maybe it has little leafy things on top of it, some sort of taller grass stuff, just to break up the shapes a little bit, give some sharper, thinner lines in there. That can be good. Or maybe it's an entire plant right? So instead of just random ones kind of different places, there was a couple of little longer leaf plant ones somewhere. Now, that's the biggest thing. Let's spread the green out, show that it's going other places. Let's give more function and use out of the magic here. And you've kind of got magic coming up there on the top. I'm curious if it can almost be like it's like a little fountain and there's magic kind of spewing out of it, right? And then that's sparking life is where these little things come down. So there we go. Marcel, there's just some ideas. And of course, this goes to everybody, not just Marcel, but if you go on and work on these pictures, I'd love for you to post the finals up on the Facebook group so at least I can see them. And then, of course, others probably be interested to see how you implemented some of the ideas. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is Marco. Okay, I remember this one a little bit. I can't remember what you had going on. Oh, I think you had some trees in the background, but I was like, let's show some variance on the trees. Okay, very much going in a different direction. The different seed idea, I like. That's cool. That's cool. Very obvious magic kind of wispy thing going on. And the background is where most of this is going to play out. All right, the seed, fine, we got a close-up of it. But the action of this scene isn't reading well enough. But it can. It can. So what can we do about it? Let's drop this down. Different keyboard, different command. Take me a second to find it. What I want to do is tone that down to start with. And we can get that to pop. How would I explain this? Okay. I'm thinking if you wanted to keep going this direction, perhaps do it a bit more effectively. Let's go to color. Then nope, that's not what I meant. There we go. Then let's approach it by showing. It feels like that tree feels like that tree had autumn leaves. It had dead leaves on it, but some of them were still green. I didn't necessarily feel like the tree was coming to life, and the whole scene is kind of flat. So if we had a more interesting sky, like think about this as it's even duller than that. Let's go duller than that. If the background was really dull, and then we get more pop out of. So this is very bright. It's very happy to begin with. Everything is. But what we want to do is have it more localized. So here, we can have the tree, and it's like a dead tree, and then I'll probably want some gradient in the background, actually. I don't know how you have the layers set up, but maybe the bottom of the scene has a little bit lighter, goes up a little bit darker, as it goes up in the sky. Give us some clouds, just some very soft cloud sort of shapes. So it's not completely flat back there, one tone. And then here we can have the leaves. Now right now the leaves were just in between all the limbs, but of course they should be getting lost up in the tree, right? So some of these, I'm not going to make all those marks. We need something that actually has leaf-like shapes. There. So we can have some of these leaves starting here, right? Now it feels like that's what's happening. Of course, leaves also start on the ends of the little branches. So on the outsides, that's where we're going to have the leaves, the little tips, right? That's where the budding leaves are. And budding leaves tend to be a bit more yellow. They get more green as they get older. So little yellow-green ones out towards the tips. And then we've got the bigger leaves back in here. And it feels like that would convey it a bit more. Kind of going that direction with it. Almost think of like a cloudy kind of dark sky, and then this what would be a scary, skeleton tree up against the sky, but now it's got leaves coming out all over it. And you can put some of the leaves in, and then you can come back and maybe add some of the limbs as they come up and cut through this. So we're building three-dimensionality into it. We don't just have a flat one where it looks like the leaves are coming from on top of the tree. Now we have depth to it. We're trying to give depth as we're looking up. So some of these, right? You can see the limbs coming up, going kind of behind some of these. No. So hopefully that kind of gives you a direction. We can get more color out of this, right? So with the magic kind of going on there, I'll use a different color too. So the magic could have a bit of color to it. As it's going up there. And if you wanted to light the leaves, you could also do that. With kind of lighting them there. Oh man, that volume is way up. Okay. Yeah. So that's the direction I'd go with it. It would take quite a bit of work to redo it that direction. But ultimately, I think it would be a lot more successful of an image. It would have more depth as you're looking up. It would convey it more, because right now I just feel like it's an autumn tree because of all the brown. And it would have a better mood to it. It would be a better contrast between the life and the dull gray. Appreciate you joining the challenge there, Marco. Next up, Matt Oates. Okay. Christian says, I remembered you mentioned once a web page that contained good res images of master paintings. Do you remember the website? Yes, you are looking for Art Renewal. I think the abbreviation is ARC, Art Renewal Center. I think it's Center. Yeah, but look up Art Renewal Center ARC. And it has a whole collection of master's paintings. You can get the free version, which is a lower res copy of the images, or you can become a member of the ARC. They have all kinds of high profile competitions and other stuff. You can check out their website. And one of the bonuses of being a member is that you have access to the high res copies of these images, of these classical paintings. And frankly, they're much better than you can find pretty much anywhere else online. These are artists that have somehow got permission to take high-res, well-lit photos of paintings you'd find in, classic museums, and they're excellent for referencing, details and all that stuff. So, and it's also, if you're interested in finding some really good galleries of even living artists, they have like the Living Masters gallery, and you can see the people that are just phenomenal figure or portrait painters that are living today, and just be super either inspired or disheartened, one or the other, by looking at some of their work. Yeah. Okay, Matt. Yeah, you definitely changed up some things here. We talked about some possibilities. You previously didn't have the plants underneath. You basically were going with the vines, and you had more of a bonsai sort of tree going on top. This is one of those scenes I think is largely successful. It does well to convey the idea that this thing is just having life flowing out of it. And that's cool. I like that. The shapes are good. The variety of shapes, you've got mushrooms and different kinds of plants. You got the longer shapes of the vines coming out. And you change this up to be more of a younger plant, kind of a seedlings. And that's a good call. I like that. So what can we do from here, or what problems are we looking at? Right now, everything just feels hazy. And that's something that we should address. And maybe a better way to go about lighting some of this. Yeah, I think you went with just the hazing light. So you just kind of have a glow around a lot of this stuff, but it doesn't look like something that's glowing, if that follows. Like, there's this glow around this, but it doesn't look like it actually gives off light. So let's see about creating a little bit more dynamic light on this by using the light sources that we already have, or maybe we need to invent one. And what's some options there? Okay. Another thing is we're running into the background and the foreground elements here, all having very similar values. Let's start with that. And we'll talk about color. So there we could see the values very similar. When we get it down, they don't show up very much. And what we do want is a good separation of the background and the foreground. So we either need to brighten the foreground so it stands out from the background. That is, foreground needs to be darker than the background, and background needs to be darker than the foreground, because right now they're both right around the midtones. And it makes sense that with so much light here, the foreground elements should probably be lighter, which means that we need to get the background elements darker. Grab some of that tone. I can't remember. I want to think that in your original concept, you had a light coming down on the scene as well. And that idea might be worth revisiting. We could let the bottom of these guys sort of drift off. They're really tall, unbroken shapes. And We need some soft edges here, so here we go. We now have atmosphere. Now, this one just takes a little bit because I'm trying to work around all the foreground elements. It would probably not be nearly as difficult for him because I reckon he has this divided into useful layers. Okay, so if we kind of start with that, then what do we want to do from here? Well, we have a light coming down on these guys, and let's see about punching some of this up. Got some nice oranges here. Simplifying some of this. We can have some simple shapes. And then the lights on these could be, and this is pretty bright light, you could just have a nice white light right across the top of some of this stuff. So if it's being lit, it's just being blown out white. But then that's not the whole thing. It's just certain spots here that catching the direct light. And then the other spot is shadowed. A bit more color back into that. This feels a little too straight, so we could change that up, like having another one as it sort of meanders way down the side, sort of drips off. So we actually get the idea of some sort of water, right? And you can fuzz out a little bit, like it's a little waterfall. Maybe we have some splash at the bottom. It gives a better sense of action too. You know, we got like droplets sort of going down like that. You've got that idea down here too. Now, the tops of these, we can think about, oh, right, the tops of these are going to be wet, right? So those are great options or opportunities in order to get some good reflected light right up on the top of those. And then you could also have the light coming down, like on these guys. What? This pen. I'm still trying to get used to this pen. No, that's too big. I need like 8. Where's my pen? There we go. Ugh. This pen. Okay. It's like, if you still wanted that light coming down, that's an option. So we'd basically be having it catching the sides of those, and like the top of this, the tops of these guys. But the underside of these are going to be nice and bright, right? And they have a tendency to go a bit yellow if you see them from underneath. And you can even punch it up a bit more. Bring in some other colors. Don't just want one tone of green, just bring in a little extra, play around with that. on the wonderful color coming into it. And same sort of thing we can do with these. Well, we can have some green on them. And I still have that light coming down, hitting the top of it. Whoa. Nope, I didn't mean to drag that. There we go. All right. What else? Okay. Over here, let's not lose the... we can lose some of the rocks and stuff into darkness, but we don't necessarily want to lose the vines. So I would keep them away so that they still stand out a little bit. Grab some of the color that you have there, and you can run those down. We might let them get dark, right, on the bottom. Give it a little volume to it. Yeah. You go that way. What else could we do? I think that's a really good start. I'd be curious to see using these vines a bit more. They seem a little underutilized. A good option here is doing what nature does, and that is little vines take use of big vines. So you can have little vines that are wrapping around this guy and using him for support as they work their way out. And they can be like looking for things to grab onto. And vines like doing this. They send out the little curlies in order to try to... there's probably a proper term for it. I bet it's not curlies. They send out those little things in order to try to find stuff to grab onto. And those are fun shapes that would work well. You can have some, around here. You've got to have another vine like wrapping around this guy. And you can see him maybe more in the foreground, get a little... That's much too bright, but... No! Yes! Ugh. Yeah, more in that range. But then you can see some of his little close-ups of stuff there. Same thing here. And that would give a bit more energy to it, having the smaller ones going around the bigger ones, the grapply little ones looking for stuff. And I would feel like it's really growing out. It's trying to grab stuff. Maybe even the little one has grabbed a hold of something and sort of spreading out from there. And now it's actually budding some leaves. And that's something that's bothering me with these a little bit. They just didn't have much going on with them. You had the little flower on that one. I think that's the right direction. So you could even spread those out a bit more, or maybe it's a flower that comes off with a little vine. Right? You could throw some of those on there too. That would be a good call. So there we go. He said, yeah, that makes sense now that you're saying it. Values need to stop seeing a piece after a long time. Yeah, I had two versions of the light coming down. Tried to keep the light just around the seed in case it was distracting. I think you've done pretty well. This background is all balanced pretty well. I'm trying to get rid of just the haze and let the light really be a bit more intentional and localized where it needs to be. Yeah. So largely successful. Let's punch it up with some more fun shapes and kick some more colors back into like the leaves up here. They're just pretty doled out. Those almost feel like older autumn leaves, and we want them a bit more young, full of life. Don't say it. Okay. And last up is Mikawai. Adobe, yes. All right, Mikawai. Yeah, I remember this. Okay. You were going with a bigger scene, more trees, so we see the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, I like that approach. Changing it up a little bit, maybe from what most people would think. Showing a larger group, not just like a small action. Right now, right now, a lot of the image isn't being utilized as much as it could be. So we have large sections of the image that really aren't adding anything to the narrative. If anything, they need to at least be establishing that this is maybe a bit less hospitable. I mean, it looks like there's nothing growing there, but it doesn't look uninviting. So if you're at least going to use that, perhaps do things like have some, having like big spiky rock formations. Why won't that stay where I click? Let me start, throwing this sort of thing in there, and this whole area is just covered on these massive spiky rocks. Then an oasis starting in the middle of this seems kind of weird, and now these other parts in the image serve a little bit more function than what they did previously. So we're trying to utilize that a bit more. And the other thing is, you could have some mountains back here, right? You could have, I know it's very straightforward thing to do, and a lot of other people have already done it, but it also is a very simple read. If you're to look at the image, you can instantly tell what's going on with it. So something like that. And you can create some mid-ground ones. Then that sort of makes a bit more use out of the scene as well. Even just doing a little bit like that. As far as the action and stuff, what's going on, this very similar approach to what we saw on the other image with the trees growing up, but because they're crisscrossing, it doesn't seem like there's as much deliberateness to them. And I would suggest trying to get these to follow some sort of pattern that would help convey the action of what's going on. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. What sort of patterns, shapes could you do in order to make this both feel kind of natural and intentional? The one that the other image used, of course, was the radiating design with the trees coming out. And that's very effective, very effective. Something I would consider doing is using like a spiral where the trees are doing this. Maybe there's multiple spirals kind of following this cue. And so, this tree, I almost need to use a different color so it'll show up. So this tree is kind of coming up like this, and then they get different directions, but they're following a certain pattern. They're creating that, and maybe there's another one that creates it that way. Or, you could do spirals a couple of different ways. They could all be doing that, right? So it starts here, and it kind of gets bigger as it goes up. And so then we have that sort of paradigm, right? And that has a bit more energy to it because it sort of has the radiating, but yes, it also has a bit of a spiral feel to it. So that could be a good option. And, if you wanted to do spiral itself, that possibly could work, where the trees kind of grow up to form these shapes. Or you could even have almost like the trees are growing out of this, right? That it has some sort of magic coming out of it, and the trees come down here and they connect. Get a little odd with it, but that could work. Or you could do it like think of it like water, right? Like a big splash. So, boom, like how would water splash? It's usually a little bit uneven, kind of goes up. Has ripples. So you design your trees to follow the pattern of a water splash. And people will recognize that pattern. You've seen water splash so many times in your life that emotion and that connotation of splash of energy and it'll be brought over to the image, and you'll kind of imbue that into your image by using that design. That would be good. This is feeling a little odd. Just the heel. That's a perfect little mound. So maybe this thing is on a whole slope. Or if it's on a hill, then think about making it as if this is a big rock. And it would be like, okay, so it's kind of like a standalone rock that has a bit of dirt on it. And then maybe that sort of thing. So it's not just your perfect little round heel. But some of this here is perhaps straight rock, and it's growing out of rock. And you've got striations and stuff back in here. Cracks and stuff. So that could work. It just changes it up because right now we have very general, and we want to get a bit more specific, specific with the creativity. So yeah, think about a new pattern that you could use with the trees. Now the trees themselves are pretty workable. Like the shapes that you're using, the colors that you're using. The leaves are perhaps the foliage is perhaps a bit too massed. Like it's a perfect little mass. Generally, leaves are a bit more random than that. They don't have these almost like topiaries, where they've been trimmed to have a very, very clean little shape. So let's look for some areas of smaller ones, right, that we could do. And you can also come back in with some sort of scattery brush and paint the background into it a little bit in order to break up the edges and have little spots where you can see through, right? Because that's what trees do. You have both. And using a scattering brush can be a good way to, you push this way, you push the leaves into the background a bit, and then you get the background, you push into the leaves a little bit. And you're going back and forth until it has about the right balance between the two that you like. With the seed, the shape is good. The big cracks are good. Can we get some more color out of it? Because right now it's just a gray brown. Can we push it to have something? Can it be? It can be purple. I don't care what color it is. We just need something on it that's going to give it some more visual pop. And the values don't necessarily need to change because the dark against the lighter sky works quite well. So maybe we just come in here and add a bit more color. Even something like that would be helpful. You could have some Some blue light from the sky up there. So what if the sky is a bit darker back there? Maybe there's a big dark cloud kind of behind that. And sometimes you have to invent things like that, right? I want that to be darker behind this seed so the light stands out and the color pops better. But the sky's blue, all right? Well, you invent a cloud. Now there's a reason for it to be darker. Artistic license. So maybe there's some cool light coming down on that. But then you've got the really good pop of color towards the bottom of it, right? Something like that. So now it has some more visual presence to it. So, okay, that's it for that one, Mikawai. Thank you for joining. And, oh yeah, let's recap the challenge before we wrap it up, because we've already been going over 2 hours. This is one of the longer streams. So the challenge this time is the War Wagon. So show me a large armored mechanized wagon. Wagon is fairly broad. Like it could be almost a big box on wheels. It doesn't necessarily have to look completely wagon. Barreling down a road. So show this thing, bouncing up and there's dirt flying out behind it or under the wheels. And this is a goblin contraption and should be chock full of cannon barrels sticking out of holes and flamethrowers shooting flames out, javelin launchers, that sort of thing. There is one driver that's up on the front, kind of like you'd have an old wagon or a stagecoach. Think about a stagecoach, right? There was one person that kind of set up front and he had the horses. There are no horses, it's mechanized. But he has all kinds of like levers, think of like brass levers, wooden levers. He's got that. Maybe he's got some goggles on, right? Because he's up front. Maybe he's got a helmet on because he's, on the war wagon. He drives up front with all that stuff. It is mechanized, so we should have it a slightly steampunk feel in that there's maybe some exhaust pipe sticking up, pumping out some dark smoke. Maybe even has some wires, hanging down or flying around, that sort of thing. Other goblin heads or hands might be seen. There's some other goblins inside operating the different weaponry. If you want to see some of them like sticking their heads out or that sort of thing, that works. But if you only see the one, that's okay too. So, up to you. Goblin vehicles are ramshackle. They're kind of mixed match, so don't make them too finely built. Like you don't need to have like perfect alignment on everything. Everything's super symmetrical. That's not goblin made. We want to make it fun. So noisy, ridiculous destruction. This thing is just a loud catastrophe rolling down the road. This is a fun scene. We're not going for dark. We're not going for gritty, and not necessarily even highly realistic. So think Hearthstone and D&D. Oh yeah, and then the image. Let me show you the image again. So it is mainly inspired by MTG artist Steve Prescott, colleague of mine. I've met him a couple of times. He did this piece called Goblin Contraption. Really good piece. I got to see a nice big print of it in person. Beautiful, lots of great details and stuff. So this is the sort of feeling that we're going for. So sort of channel this this approach, this dynamic, put it into a drivable wagon, wooden wagon sort of machine. We can have gears sticking out of it, and there should be things like cannonballs firing, flames spewing out. You could even have bombs or something like this rolling out of it as well. So that is what that is. Patrons, of course, will have their stuff reviewed in the next live stream, and everyone else is welcome to create images and share them on the Facebook group but they won't be reviewed unless you're a $10 patron or higher. So I'm going to switch that over here. Anything else I need to cover? Should have the next live stream next Friday. Don't see any reason not to. And I expect the next one to be on the 21st. I don't think I will have left I'm going out of town for Christmas to meet family. And I don't think I will have left by then. So as of now, 21st will be the final. Unless we need to push it for Christmas, I'll let you guys know. But that's it for this time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And, of course, if you want to become a patron, go out to patreon.com/swatches. Join in the next live stream. I will have the information out there. I will make the brief and the outline for this challenge available, and you can go download that at your leisure. I'll probably get that up maybe tomorrow. So that's it for now. Thank you very much for joining. Until you see you next time, keep drawing.